Okay, folks, so now here's what we're going to do. Now we're going to focus on submarines. We're going to showcase submarines and how they fit into the game. We're going to start off first. We're going to do two separate videos. First, I don't like submarines. That's just my personal opinion. But we're going to take other third-party opinions and put it into the mix here. Okay, so we're going to start out for Sea Lord Mountbatten first, and then Potato Quality second. Okay, so first we'll start off with Sea Lord Mountbatten. Then we'll move to Potato Quality. Let us know what you think in chat. And now we're going to discuss the submarines. And do submarines fit into the game? I don't think they do. I've explained why, and I'll explain why at the end of the video. So let's get on with the watching here, folks. Questions, comments, throw in chat.
Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we're talking about everyone's favorite new class, submarines. Now they are on their, I think 4th or 5th of live server random battles testing. I think 6th or 7th, maybe even 8th round of testing to the public overall, between the testing done on the PT server, then the special submarines game mode that was released way back. So at the beginning there, that's something to definitely note. They are definitely taking their time with this new class. They are not rushing it, unlike the CV rework, which was essentially a whole new class in and of itself. So that is something to commend them off the bat with. And if you look at what they've changed, and especially in this round of testing, they have addressed a whole slew of the complaints that many a player had with this class, and they've done a pretty darn good job, in my opinion, of addressing those concerns here. And we're going to go through my experience with this new iteration of submarines here in a moment. Before we get into that, though, I do want to make my position on submarines very clear. I don't think they should be in the game. I don't think they were ever intended to be in the game. It's pretty evident by the challenges that they were having trying to get them to work in some manner of balance, that they never were intended to be in the game. And if they drop the whole thing tomorrow, I wouldn't shed a tear. But if they are going to be in the game, I want them to be as balanced as possible on both sides of the periscope, meaning I want the surface ships to have a very balanced time engaging them. I also want the submarines to have a very balanced time engaging the surface ships. In previous iterations of submarines, it was in no way, shape, or form anywhere near balanced. And boy, these are very different boats now, and they are in fact all a boat except for the U-2501. It's the only proper submarine now. So the changes they've made so far, they've kind of gone in a different direction with the torpedoes, which I'm very, very interested in, and I do like the direction that they're going. We'll start there in the first, because this is probably the main complaint that many a player had with submarines, was that they could simply nuke you out of existence with their old torpedoes. Well, very happy to report that that is no longer possible, at least with the homing torpedoes. So they have absolutely nerfed the crap out of these torps. And they did what I thought they were going to do, where they increased the speed of the torpedoes up to 86 knots for most of the ships. I think you can get them up to around 90 knots if you build into them. But in the last round of testing, they didn't nerf the damage anywhere near what they should have. But now they have. So the homing torpedoes now on the U-2501, this is the German Tier 10 in the footage you're watching in the background, which the Germans had the most powerful torpedoes of the American and German submarine line during testing, and they still do. They now do a maximum damage of 8,633. That is just, I believe, a little over or under half of the damage they did beforehand. Yeah, that's a big nerf right there. And two, they decreased the homing effect yet again. And I do believe they increased the range at which the torpedoes stop homing on, I believe, just about every ship, including battleships as well. So now they home less, they stop homing further away from the enemy ships. They're still fast, though. They are still fast. And when you do hit these torpedoes now, again, you got to consider torpedo protection and all that jazz, and getting the double ping isn't quite as easy as it was beforehand for a couple of reasons that we'll get into here in a moment. So now when you land a full salvo of these torpedoes on the enemy ship, it no longer removes half of their health anymore with the homing torpedoes. If you want to do some major damage to the enemy ship, some major alpha damage, you have to use the standard non-homing torpedoes. These torpedoes do 12,500, which is still less than what the homing torps used to do back in the day, but these are much more powerful. However, they don't home. You cannot get these to home. The best you can do with these is if you're underneath the water, you ping a ship twice, they will elevate to the surface and then continue on straight. They will not track the enemy ship. That's all they do. They're much slower, again at 65 knots, and they have much less range. The homing torps have a range of 14 kilometers. The standard torps only have a range of 6.3 kilometers, which means if you want to use these torpedoes effectively, you gotta get close, and you gotta get at the surface, because the torpedoes do not have enough time to go from the depths to the surface unless you're at almost maximum range with these torpedoes. So you have to be essentially at periscope depth or on the surface for these torpedoes to hit within 6 kilometers of an enemy ship. Yeah, good luck with that. It can be done. I do pull it off, I believe, in the first match you're going to watch here. And even then, yeah, it does a lot of damage to the enemy ship. I believe it's a Montana that I hit. But I mean, good God, if there was more than just that Montana around, and even then I'd eat a pretty big chunk of damage doing this, I would have been absolute toast. So I like what they've done here. If you want to get the big damage, you have to put your ship in a very risky situation. Close in at periscope or above depth, very close to a surface ship. A range and depth at which you have to put yourself in danger. You will get hit doing this and probably outright deleted. Let's not forget that these ships are incredibly fragile. They've actually made them more fragile and much easier to detect with this new round of testing as well. So I like what they've done here with the torpedoes. They've nerfed the homing, they've nerfed the damage. They've kept the speed, which I know these torpedoes are kind of stupidly fast, but I mean, I think it's a good trade-off because you can see where they're coming from a lot sooner now. You can dodge them a lot easier now. And again, if the enemy submarine wants to do some real damage to you, they have to put themselves in harm's way. Now, of course, you can still obviously easily get finished off by one of these if you're at low health and you're out and about by yourself. However, they have made it easier for you to see where these ships are at. In fact, if you're paying attention, you can see exactly where these bad boys are at before they're even spotted, because now you as a surface ship can see their pings. I know it defies all logic and doesn't make sense, but you can see the pings now. Which means that if you're a submarine consistently pinging one ship over and over and over again, and they see where you're at, they could more than likely drop their depth charges right on top of you if they have the depth charge aircraft, or if they're a surface ship and they fill a little bowl, they can obviously sail over you and drop their depth charges on top of you as well. So that kind of addresses one issue I had where submarines could just ping for days with no repercussions. If you're paying attention now, you can see where the pings are coming from and drop your planes on those ships. So that's pretty good. In addition to that, now too, you'll notice when I get hit here, you see a little icon up here at the bottom of the screen. When you get hit now, your submarine leaks oil, which leaves a oil spill at the top of the water, surface of the water. Which means as you're putting along with this oil leak, the enemy team can track where you're at and again drop their depth charge aircraft, or if they're again in a submarine or a cruiser and feeling a little ballsy, they can sell it over to you and drop depth charges pretty much on your exact location. So yeah. Now, they haven't gotten any real buffs to survivability. They've reworked the way the damage con has worked. The submarines now have the fast damage con, and they only get 4 charges of that. Let me double check, see if I got Superintendent on. I do have Superintendent on, so they get 3 charges base, 4 charges with Superintendent. Which means you can only get hit 4 times and put out your oil spill if you want to put out your oil spill every time. Also, too, they've increased the chance of flooding via a depth charge hit to 100%. So now, every time you get hit, you're going to have a flooding and you're going to have an oil leak. So that means if you're on the surface and you get hit, you're going to have an oil leak. You can dive, but now the enemy team can see where you're at, so you have to make that decision. Do I want to use my damage con here and stop the oil leak? But now if someone hits me with a depth charge, I'm going to have a flood on me, and now I have to burn another damage con to put that out. So now you've burned through 2 of your damage cons. So this is a pretty big nerf to the ship's survivability here in that way. I believe they've also slowed down the submarines as well. I mean, they can still go like 27, 28 knots for the most part. On the 2501, I do have the speed flag on, and she can only go 27 knots now. So the 30 knot submarines are a thing of the past. I never really had an issue with that. Most of the ships in the game accelerate and decelerate way faster than they ever did. And of course, adding a piece of cloth to these ships magically makes them go 5% faster in the first place. But that was a complaint that the community had. And I mean, if you're going from a historical side of things, it is fairly valid. But I mean, this is an arcade game. So other ships, again, these ships did not maneuver anywhere near this fast in real life. If you want a better feeling for how these ships maneuver in real life, go play War Thunder. And even then, in naval realistic battles, they still maneuver way too fast than how they would in real life. So I don't really have a problem with that. With the speed that they're at right now, I feel like this is about as slow as they can get and still partake in the battles. Most of these ships would do like 12, 15 knots on the surface. So obviously going 50 knots in like a tier 8 game is, you're going to be useless. I know someone's already typing, well, that's good for them. They should be useless. Calm down there, sir. It's an arcade game. Again, you have to consider people want to play these ships. There is a portion of the community that do want to play these submarines. They get downvoted to hell on Reddit and attacked on the forums and in YouTube comments when they say that, but there is a portion of the player base that does want this. That's the reason why they said they weren't planning on adding them in the first place. Many a
Doesn't
player
have to be rammed in with everybody else. There's a way to do it,
in the
buddy.
first place. Underwater, they have less options now
say
for
just,
their
it's an
depth
arcade
setting.
game.
They can
Give
work
me
at
a
surface,
friggin' break, pal.
periscope depth, go down to operational depth, and then maximum depth, which I'm very glad they added an operational depth, because on the dev blogs it said that they had 3 positions: surface, periscope, and then maximum. Which
now
doesn't
watch
make
these
sense.
friggin'
You should be
twerps,
able to
homing
sit,
twerps.
just chilling underwater.
I'm
Not
gonna
at
wipe
maximum,
this
not
friggin'
at,
guy out.
operational. I'm sorry, not at periscope.
It's
just
still
chilling at
far
operational
from
depth.
balance. Look at the
You
friggin'
can do
curve.
that, which I
Holy
think is very
crap.
good. They have also reworked the spotting to now where essentially if you're underwater, unless you get within 2 kilometers of a ship, which is assured detection, you aren't going to be able to spot anything. And then when you're at maximum depth, you can't see anything as well. So they've nerfed that too. Another complaint that I'll often see is that they can outspot enemy destroyers. I mean, the reason destroyers are so
Look how fast
stealthy
those
is because
things
they're
go.
small ships that sit low on the waterline.
Holy
And I mean,
crap.
these are tiny ships that sit
You seen
extremely
them
low on the
taking
waterline.
Elbing out
So I
with
do
the
believe it makes
last
sense
volley
that they have the
beforehand.
best concealment normally at their
Looks like
tier.
these
'cause,
guys just
again,
missed.
It's a very small silhouette sitting in the waterline. It would make perfect sense that it's kind of hard to see. I mean, they were in real life as well.
Now he's off to the
Again,
next
especially
guy.
at periscope depth. So I believe right now this is probably the
Just ping him.
most
Doesn't worry,
balanced
mate.
this
Just
class
got to set him
has
within the
been.
reticle. It doesn't
They
have
are
to
on
be
the
where
weaker
it
side,
should
in
be.
my
Just send him off,
opinion,
then ping.
but I
And
do
away they go.
believe this is probably where they'll stay until they get released in full. And I mean,
What do you mean released
it
in
makes
full?
sense that they're not doing nearly as much damage as the other ships.
Give me a
or I mean,
friggin'
obviously,
break. Get rid
I'm
of
just
them.
someone
They
that's
do not
picked them up and
fit.
play them on and off over the past week or so since the update. So I'm not like a submarine ace by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm doing around 70 to 80,000 damage in most matches. I've had a couple of matches where I've done a little bit over 100,000 damage, but it's the same issue I'm having with other ships at higher tier. The matches are ending way too fast before I can really get anything done. But playing them is quite fun. Sub versus sub combat underwater is incredibly fun. I love it. I love fighting other submarines underwater. It's tremendously fun, and I'm glad they've maintained most
So
elements
put them in
of
a
that
different
in
friggin'
the game
format.
as
That's
well,
why I say.
throughout the several iterations of the test. And it is a nice change of pace, going from this massive surface ship to playing this sneaky deaky boat, trying to get under the water, trying to, get behind or on the sides of the enemy team, and of course trying not to get spotted and blast into oblivion. Oh, that's nothing too. The changes to the depth charges via the ASW aircraft. Now you have a smaller area that you can drop the depth charges on, but it's much more precise. So when you do aim correctly, you're going to absolutely destroy that submarine's health pool. Because most planes now drop 3 or 4 depth charges in a straight line in a small grid square. So if you aim correctly, you are going to hit that sub directly and do massive damage to that submarine. So it rewards your aiming a lot better. As I said in the dev blog, turns out it actually does that in the game as well. So
10
that's my
torpedoes.
2 cents about this version of submarines. Again.
Okay, so that's Sea Lord Mountbatten. You've seen his version. I don't agree with, it's an arcade game, fit them in. No, I don't see, based on watching that, I don't see how they fit in properly. And, just to say, well, it's an arcade game, give me a friggin' break. They sold the game a certain way. They're trying to revamp it and change it in certain ways. They could very easily have set it up where aircraft carriers and submarines could be in a separate format, just like co-op, so you can go into these different aspects of the game and satisfy everybody. But no, they don't get it. They don't get that aspect of how they can provide a more diverse game. And this is where they fail to recognize. Instead, they're very stubborn, and they're community contributors now because they filtered out all the ones that didn't agree with them, and you toe the company line, or you got a typical friggin' Russian attitude. And to further pontificate, they said, well, we're leaving Belarus and Russia, putting our game over into the hands of this studio. Well, that studio was the parent company of Wargaming to begin with from 2011 to 2022, with headquarters based in St. Petersburg, Russia. So it's just friggin' utter nonsense and subterfuge and friggin' bullshit. And this has been the issue with Wargaming from the beginning. Hey, people understand they gotta make money. We understand that. That's not the issue. It's the bullshit and the friggin' not being straight up with the player base. That is hurting them, and they don't get it. And it's this Russian mentality that we know best. Yeah, you can fool most of the people some of the time, but not all the time, guys. Okay, so that's Sea Lord Mountbatten's version of submarines. I don't agree with him. And that's my prerogative. Now we're going to look at potato quality. Now to let you know about potato quality, he was with a half-decent clan. A very high level, plays battleships very well. And he knows this game quite well as well. My personal favorite is Flamu. He's not perfect. Who is perfect? Okay. So let's look at potato quality. Let's see his version of the submarine remake. He did this video on April 6th. And let me know what you think, guys. On with the show, we must go.
I've got a few submarine games for you. Isn't that fun? I promise these are the interesting parts. I've definitely cut these out so that you actually see what the gameplay part is like, not all of the waiting. And let me be honest, there's a lot of waiting. But early on in the games I was playing, I often tried to use this strategy of just sending my torps out as soon as I had range on the cap, especially with the Balau, with its 2 launcher reload times. It was an interesting way to potentially get an easy first hit on a destroyer that rushes a cap. Our Holland rushed in, and if the enemy destroyer had as well, I could have got a quick ping and potentially landed some good torpedoes on him. That didn't happen, so now we just get to take the B cap for free. This is something that is incredibly strong about these subs. Our Holland just rushed in and YOLO'd, but for myself, there's really no risk in me doing this since I can just dive. The Holland doesn't even have a smoke, so it's very, very, very risky for him. But I think that's one of the big issues here is there's not a lot of risk in playing these aggressive positions. And especially now with how tanky it feels like these submarines are, it's very difficult to die unless you go all the way in super hard and get yourself surrounded. Even then, I've found it's very difficult to die. Of course, another strategy to deal with destroyers is send some torpedoes towards their smoke and then blind hit a ping. I'm laughing, but this guy, I guarantee you, was a little bit frustrated with that. I know I would be. That's an easy 6,000 damage. Now, moving forward, we did force the Elbing out, and he does spot us. So he knows we're here. He knows we're caught bow in. I'm assuming he's going to want to go aggressive. He hasn't really seen much of my teammates around, so I just preemptively launch some torps for him and turn away. I'm really not scared here. It's shocking, actually. This ship, the Elbing, the destroyer, should be a pretty terrifying threat for me, and yet I'm really not afraid. I can just dive and run away. It's so easy. And in fact, our preemptive torps landed 1. So that's 13k into this Elbing so far. And now that we know he's used his damage control, since our damage numbers aren't ticking up, and we did land a flood there, he can't repair this ping. So we get ourselves a couple pings on target, not even a double ping, and we land another torp. And guess what? This one's flooding. So we do have an enemy submarine to deal with. He did land a couple pings on ourselves, but a quick repair and we'll be out of the way of those torps in no time. Getting one last ping in, and this is a double ping. Look at how long this timer is. 75 seconds. So those 2 torpedoes on the way are pretty much guaranteed to hit this poor Elbing, since I don't believe his damage con is going to be up in time. And sure enough, we actually land 2 more torps. So we've done 30,000 damage to that poor Elbing so far. We are locked on though. Unfortunately, our own damage control isn't available, and the Belau gets another 2 torps into us. But a quick dive, emergency use of our consumables to make us a little more maneuverable, and we barely avoid them. But honestly, it's not a huge deal. I found that sub versus sub combat is this weird game of just laser tag. The torps don't really do a lot of damage. You'll see here we actually do manage to hit one, and it's only around 4,000 damage, which isn't great. The idea behind sub versus sub combat, in my mind, really is about spotting each other and your teammates doing the damage to one another. So unfortunately our second one will miss, but these pings underwater certainly do look a little bit like slow lasers. It's a weird combat style. It was interesting only because I hadn't really done much of it. I think over time the sub versus sub combat will get pretty boring. As far as the subs versus battleships, well, it's just free. This is the most free gameplay experience you're ever going to get. This is the turn it on easy mode in Doom Eternal and just wreck face. Like, that's what this is here. There's really no danger at all. The only danger is that the enemy battleships die before my torps get there. I'm actually really not going to do much damage at all here, since these enemy battleships are going to die that quickly. I think that's really the unfortunate side of these subs. The gameplay loop is relatively easy, and unfortunately, it also means it's hard to get big damage scores unless you're very, very aggressive or get some pretty lucky games. I found myself often stonewalled by some destroyers or the enemy submarines, not able to get to the back lines like I want to be right here. Like, this damage is so simple to get. As I'm missing my pings, let's just ignore that and move on. It's very easy damage to get, but it always happens right at the end, and you notice the Prince Ruprecht is going to go down here. The enemy team is going to tick out on points. So I don't really have high damage games, and yet it's not a lot of fun, and there's not really a lot of interesting mechanics here. So nothing's really changed in that respect from the old subtests. My conclusion from that has largely stayed the same, outside of, well, these new ones are a little harder to take down, which is certainly disappointing for a surface ship. Especially if you're in an Elbing and you lose almost all your health to a single submarine. That is demoralizing. So I think I'm going to have to figure out a way to deal with these subs in my destroyers. I haven't played a lot of DDs against subs yet, but it certainly does feel very one-sided in these engagements. Something else I found about subs is a lot of these very well-contested caps, the C cap on this map and the D cap on North, is very tough to get. This choke point is such a stalemate for most of the games that I've played on these maps that a lot of the time it's tough to even take these caps. But early game, no problem. I'll just YOLO in with my sub and hopefully take the cap above water. I'm using the island, of course, on my right to block some spotting from the enemy destroyers, and I get a cap very, very easily. To me, it's a little shocking how easy it is to play these objectives, how little risk I find in playing the objective like this. I'm not really much of a history professional or knowledgeable very well about especially naval history, but I do feel like when a submarine is around enemy ships, the goal really is to stay undetected as much as possible and not show yourself very easily to the enemy. I could be wrong. You could very well correct me in the comments down below, but it seems a little bit risky to be just full charging into capture zones like this without a care in the world. It seems a little bit counterintuitive to me, at least in terms of what I know of submarines, and that when they do get hit, they tend to die very quickly. They want to avoid taking hits, as far as I know. But here, I am undetected. I'm playing at periscope depth here, so I've got a very small concealment circle. But it still feels a little odd how easy I find it to just send it into caps. That's essentially my start of every match I'm playing. I'm just going to head straight for the cap and hopefully spot some stuff. And then if I do, maybe dive and run away. And
You got 4 torps. 4 torps on that guy.
like I have in these last 2 games.
And
You'll
he
notice
takes out
smoke
the
screens are some of the
Massachusetts.
easiest targets for submarines. These very slow stationary ships are very, very, very easy to kill. And
Yeah.
assuming you're decent with your predictions, these blind fire pings are not hard to get at all. So we've already landed 4 torps on this poor Harbin. I guess that's, yeah, the tier 8 from the new Ban Asian line. If you watch my videos as I grind my way through this ship,
So
you'll
4
know I
torps on the
hate it.
poor guy, and how
So
many is he
this-
going to get on him
This
this
is
time?
what suffering looks like.
There,
There it
and he
is,
just
ladies
kills
and
him.
gentlemen.
Yeah.
This
Just
poor
wipes him
Harbin
right out.
fire. I'm sorry. I've been there, man. Harbin is really, really, really rough. But yeah, submarines just make it that much harder. This poor guy got killed through no fault of his own, really. He just used his smoke, played aggressive, tried to get close to the cap, try and even be in range to shoot, and a submarine just pinged him through his smoke and killed him outright. It's a little ridiculous, in my opinion, still, just how unfair this is. It's at the same time as it's boring to play and boring to play against, it's also unfair. It feels very unfair from the surface ship perspective, and I don't really know what to change that. This current iteration, it's very frustrating. You know, this poor Stalingrad is behind an island from me. He knows where I am. I've been spotted. He knows I'm behind an island, and yet these torps, I curved around that island, and since I had a double ping, well,
Yeah,
that's an
curving
80
torps.
second
Can you believe it?
timer. This poor guy takes
Unbelievable.
20k, and he actually goes down to my team. Fast forwarding this last little bit, I thought this was a hilarious clip. This poor Hindenburg. He's dodging all of my team. Like, the game is over at this point, but at the same time of trying to dodge all of my teammates, it's ping, 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 ping in the background. It's just constant, never-ending
Yeah.
homing torps for this poor guy. And, oh, he damage conned it. Okay, well, let's decide to send more torps out and ping, ping, ping away
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm
You
not
can only
actually gonna get
damage
any
con
damage
so
here,
much.
but for the Hindenburg player, I think we can all agree he wasn't having the best experience there. I don't think that is a particularly enjoyable experience. He was gonna die anyway without me there, but those extra
So there you
pings
go.
can get very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from experience. I've been in that spot as a surface ship player, trying to avoid all the other surface ship combat that you're engaged with, and then there's something you can't really deal with, constantly just poking at you from the background.
Yeah,
Of course, if
so
a battleship
what
decides
happened
to
to
push,
this
well,
Russian
that's the easiest
balance?
target in the world.
Give me a
So
friggin'
this
break.
Yamato is going to be forced to turn out here. He actually dumps his anti-submarine warfare very quickly, I think these new pings are a way to bait or trap um, enemy battleships into using their anti-submarine warfare. It's really not good to blind fire these, since most DDs aren't, or sorry, most submarines aren't just going to be sitting stationary. You'll notice how badly his anti-submarine warfare missed me by. He used his damage control right away, which actually worked out for him. I wasn't able to re-ping him for those initial set of torps. But the Belau is one of those spin-to-win style ships where there's torps front and back, constantly reloading.
Yeah.
And, well, we get them with the second set here.
Guess
This is what I'm talking about when I say these ships are just a little bit too tanky and able to withstand very dangerous positions for too long. I am bow in, forcing myself closer to a Småland, a Belau, surrounded by ships like a Hindenburg, Elbing, Kurfürst, Yamato, and my team is all gone. This is a really bad position. It's time for me to turn away. But surprise, surprise, I do manage to get away with basically all of my health intact. I just ran away and kept these guys spotted for the most part. That was really my goal here. You'll notice I'm stern in here. I'm ready to turn away and, well, get away very quickly. And since I outspot the Elbing, I outspot the DD, I can just sit on the surface and constantly spot this guy. These DDs that are seemingly requiring themselves to play around concealment, since they don't have a heal. They don't have the ability to dive underwater and become essentially immune to damage.
So now you see how this imbalance comes into play. So this is why I say submarines cannot fit into the game.
It doesn't feel very fair from that surface ship perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing to consider here.
Yeah, I've been there. I got wiped out
with these
in the Henri the Fourth.
Is the counterplay. What it feels like to play against these things is it feels unfair. It doesn't feel like a balanced PvP experience. And as far as playing the subs go, well, if I show you 3 games in the course of, well, around 10 minutes, there's some action here. There's some decent, tense fights and experiences. But even
4
then,
torpedoes.
It's really just me beating up on people. This poor Elbing takes 4 torps in his smoke after I got
Yeah, and he just pinged
and
the
of course,
crap out of him.
because he ate all those torps, he wanted to damage con. And when he comes out of his smoke, I'm ready to spot him again. And I can just dive underwater like this to avoid damage. After I get my guaranteed ping, my torps are on the way already. What's a destroyer player to do other than run away? I don't think that's a very valid way to counterplay these.
There you go. He wipes the Elbing off the map.
To me. So, unfortunately, I haven't had insane damage games, but they've all been games that I think showcase how annoying these submarines can be. But let me know what you think in the comments down below.
Yeah, I'll let you know what I think. I think the friggin' submarines, and I've expressed this, they should be out of the game. You can put them in a different format. Very easy. Risk supporting casts of bots, and that way the guys that like subs can still partake in the experience. And allow the time to maybe get it in such a way that you can integrate in the game the way they initially wanted. But right now, it's just not working that way. And they don't get it, and they just keep ramming it down people's throats. So, questions, comments, throw in chat below or comment below. And let me know what you think. What do you think? Subs should be in the game or not? I'm adamant that they shouldn't be. And it's a real simple fix. You got your surface ships that have been in the game that work, albeit not always perfect, but it's workable. People are used to it. And that's the battleships, the cruisers, destroyers. Take the aircraft carriers, take the submarines, put them in a separate format, just like you would with co-op, so you can go into a sea, plane and underwater mode, which is the aircraft carriers and the submarines, and have a supporting cast of bots. So you got real players that are in CVs, aircraft carriers, real players in submarines, and they could have supporting casts of bots. Perfect, just like they do in co-op. But wargaming is just adamant, oh, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. Come on now. Okay, so let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Take care, folks. Talk to you soon. Michael J. Over and out. Love and peace to everyone, and especially love and peace to Russia and Ukraine. No reason for acrimony, folks. Love and peace. Love and peace to everyone. Take care. Talk to you all soon. Ciao.